Simcha, celebration, Simcha, Simcha, celebration of life.
Hello, welcome to Simcha, a celebration of life. I'm Nikki Wallman. Rugby, one of our favorite national sports, has been played, watched and celebrated throughout South Africa. Over the years, many members of the Jewish community have been involved in various spheres of rugby, in coaching, administration, match officiation, and of course, as rugby players. The Springbok Minyan refers to those 10 players of Jewish origin who have represented South Africa. In the next half hour, we honor the achievements of Jews who have distinguished themselves as players and referees of this wonderful game called rugby.
It's a very interesting sociological study, that you have the Dutch who hardly play rugby, but their descendants in South Africa became such ardent rugby players and great players. I mean, the greatest players in the world. And there's something about wanting to be assimilated into the leadership of your community, and the leadership of the community become English and very keen on various forms of football. And I think in the sense that was true for the Jewish migrants who came from Lithuania, Poland, Latvia, Russia, countries that weren't interested at all in rugby, and they came out. Now, it wasn't so easy for them to be assimilated into society. First of all, they had a language problem. Secondly, they didn't go to the NG Kerk, and they went mainly to country areas, Victoria West and so on. So there wasn't a natural community for them to fit into, but there was sport. And this is where, you must admire the sort of Jewish forebears, is their insistence on education, how they tried so hard to get their kids educated. And the kids then went to go to school. Now, who are the big heroes in school? It's what I think Evelyn Waugh called it the athletocracy. Your sportsmen are the big heroes. And that was another natural way for them to get assimilated. So I think that this is part of the Jewish interest in rugby football, was a part of the whole process of assimilation. Morris came from Janssenville, and his mother and Louis Babro's mother were sisters. They were Schubels, they were sisters. And he came to the University of Cape Town. And from the start was obviously a very powerful man and a powerful wing. He was fast, he was strong, he had a high knee action, and people found him very difficult to tackle. So he started playing at a very early age in top-class rugby, and was chosen for South Africa on the 1931-32 tour when Benny Osler was the captain. Now, Benny changed rugby in many ways because he developed all sorts of kicks, box kicks and diagonal kicks and so on, and grubber kicks that weren't in rugby. And drop kick was his big thing. And if he kicked a drop kick from the left, then he would shout, "Chase it, Zimmy," because very often it went across to the right and was missed, and Zimmy would... And then on one occasion he shouted this at him for the umpteenth time, "Chase it, Zimmy," and Zimmy stopped in his tracks and said, "Chase it yourself," which was quite delightful. Fred was the most quiet, gentlemanly man who was an enormously strong player. He grew up mostly in the Eastern Cape, and he had his own business in Joburg. And Craven had enormous affection for him. They had this sort of physical contact, and there's something very special about a changing room. Craven said, why do we say that rugby produces such camaraderie? He said, it's because we make contact. And he said, why do we say if you rub shoulders with somebody? Because you take something of that person with you. We were talking about the Jews. Being together with people is so important. So if you don't eat with people, pray with people, work with people, then playing with people became such an important thing. Louis grew up in Smithfield, which is way out in the Free State. And his first rugby coach was a nun. He went to the Holy Cross Convent in Alloway North, and his first rugby coach was Sister Anthony. And he had such nice things to say about her in later life. Then he went to Grade College and he came to University of Cape Town as a medical student. And he was chosen in 37. That 37 Springbok team became the first team to beat New Zealand in New Zealand. They won the first one, we won the second one, so the third one was all to play for. And that was quite possibly South Africa's greatest rugby achievement, was winning that third test, 17-6, and Louis scored a try, he made 2 tries, he was an absolute star, he was a great attacking player.
Dr. Barbro, dit was deel van 'n hele militêre strategie as ek die ding reg begryp, die toets tussen ons en die All Blacks, né?
Ja, generaal Montgomery het gevra dat 'n groot wedstryd moet gespeel word. Die ding is om die Duitsers moet dink dat ons kan nie 'n groot aanval aanvaar as ons nou gaan rugby speel nie. En 2 dae voor die slag op El Alamein het ons daar net agter El Alamein stasie op so 'n soutpan dat hierdie groot wedstryd plaasgevind en ek kan vir jou dit sê, jy sou nie glo daar was 'n groot oorlog in 2 dae nie, ons het so aan mekaar vasgepak.
Werklik.
Ons het omtrent 11-6 gewen. Baie harde wedstryd, baie mense het kom kyk, want dit wat ons wou gehad het. En die Duitsers in 'n boek wat ek gelees het, hulle chief of staff het gesê, ja, hulle reconnaissance planes het hierdie wedstryd gesien, of baie manne gesien wat beklei op die veld. Hulle kon nie glo dat daar 'n groot slag gaan plaasvind in die volgende paar dae.
A celebrated Jewish rugby player, Oki Geffen was the key contributor to the unexpected whitewash of the All Blacks in 1949. What made this Springbok prop forward so remarkable was his ability to kick the ball between the posts with unerring precision, and hence his nickname, the Boot.
He wasn't just a kicker. Oki was a very good prop forward. In fact, in the prisoner of war camp, Bill Payne taught him how to scrum. But when it came to the test here, and it's still the greatest game I've ever seen in my life, 1949.
On that day, on that particular day, it was a case of, it was an opportunity that was given to me, and every kick had to go through. And this is how I always played my rugby, that if they give me a chance, take it, but don't make a mess of it.
He wasn't the first choice kicker. The first choice kicker was Jack van der Schyff, and Oki picked up the ball. They'd missed, and Mornay's dad, Felix du Plessis, was debating who should kick next, and Oki picked up the ball of his own will, put it down, and they let him kick, and he kicked it over.
Then Pierre came the fourth one. This time I knew the whole game depended on this one. And as I hit the ball, the crowd behind the poles could see it was going. Then the screamers let up, and then I looked up and saw the ball passing through. I can only tell you that even now, speaking to you, Pierre, I'm getting gooseflesh. And then it made it 12, and then Bob Scott, unfortunately, or fortunately for us, missed a kick right in front of the poles. And then the last kick was, they dramatised the last kick. They said I was so tired or whatever. I could have kicked all day that day. And it was quite close. The poles were about 30 yards in front of the poles, and so it was just a case of stepping forward and hitting it over, and that was the 15th. The greatest and the happiest and the proudest moment of my life.
Cecil grew up poor, you know. They lived in one room in Muizenberg, and he went to Sax. And he finished, I think he matriculated when he was 14 or 15. He went to University of Cape Town as a 16-year-old. So he was obviously very able. He was very fast, very brave as a player, and an enormously loyal man. He's one of the loyalest people you can meet. And he really is a credit to rugby football and everything else he's belonged to. He was the anaesthetist in the first heart transplant.
Well, I was just an ordinary player. I didn't feel any different to anybody else. When I was capped for South Africa, I had Oki Geffen, he was another Jewish man. And there's never been any difference between us as Jews in playing in a team or any other player. I coached University of Cape Town for about 10 years, and then Western Province, and then the Springboks. So I've had quite a long session of rugby in my life.
Cecil had an incredible rapport with his players. He loved them, he cared for them far more than just as players.
A lot of coaching is man management. And I think you've got to know that everybody's going to have a bad day sometime. You've got to be able to become friendly with your players in the sense that they've got to respect you. But you've got to know what makes them tick. And once players have got respect for you, I think, and having been a Springbok, it does help you quite a lot.
Craven once said of him, he said, I wanted a rugby coach and I got a nursemaid.
Rugby was my life. While I played, I gave up everything.
Wilfie was a sort of a genius of attacking rugby. He was incredibly fast and he was enormously brave, because he wasn't a big man, but he could tackle like a demon.
My father was a rabbi and a doctor of divinity, had the highest degrees that you could have in the rabbinate. And one of the members of his community came up to him one day and he said, "How can you let your son play rugby on Shabbos? You're the leader of the community. You're a doctor of divinity. On the Shabbos, he should be in shul, not on the rugby field." My father's answer was, "My son was born with a God-given talent. Now, who am I to argue with God?"
He left rugby and went to rugby league, which in those days was a very naughty thing to do, it was treachery. And he did so because his dad, who was a rabbi, couldn't afford to pay his fees at university while he was failing. And he'd failed again. So he went off to play for Leeds in rugby league because they would pay for him to go to the university and complete his dentistry.
I was accepted as a normal player like anybody else. There was no favoritism, but amongst the Jewish population, it was slightly different. They were very proud of us playing for Transvaal or Western Province or South Africa. They were proud of it.
Joe Kaminer and his twin brother Louis, they grew up in Petersburg and they played for the school in Petersburg. And they were both incredibly fast.
I don't know if you know that my dad was a rabbi. We used to play rugby. Of course, my mom and dad completely against it, coming from the shtetls in Europe, and said that you don't play rugby, it's meshuga, it's madness. So what our coach, who was our Afrikaans teacher, made us say that there's in Louis Trichardt, there's a display of the band, and said, so if we joined the band, the normal cadet band, and we should get dressed up as cadets, and off we went to. Meantime, he was taking us to rugby, and we played this. I didn't know until the last 2 years, where the Jewish population in Petersburg was quite versely told my mom and dad, "This is what's happening. You must be proud of them, and you must let them play rugby." Eventually, when they allowed us to play, and my mom says to my dad, "Come on, let's go and watch him." As I get there, they're carrying a guy off. His knee's not here, his knee's over here. Gee, what a game. And that was the end. And they never watched rugby again until, when I played the test, my mom went to watch it. But after the game, the next day, she said, oh, why are you guys so untidy? Look at those Frenchmen, they're so tight. In the meantime, it was the opposite side. The French were, you know, jersey hanging out, the socks down, and South Africans. So she was looking at the French, thinking that was the Springboks, and in the meantime, it was the other way around.